Now, I don't agree with everything Ben Shapiro doesn't say, but I think when it comes to wokeness, we are 100% aligned. Let's go and check out 20 times Ben Shapiro shut down woke students.
Debating is one thing, but standing up against cold, hard facts is another. These students thought they had strong arguments against Ben Shapiro. They were in for a rude awakening. Let's start with a student who thought citing medical organizations would win an argument on gender. But authority alone doesn't always work.
And all of these associations have multiple thousands of doctors, sociologists, psychologists, and with PhDs in their respective fields backing the idea that sex and gender are different, effectively gaining the medical consensus for sex and gender being two different concepts, yet you have a different opinion.
Okay, so sex and gender are two different concepts, but gender is tied to biology. So one of the big problems that you see in sort of the argument in favor of trans rights is this notion that gender and sex are completely separable. They're not completely separable. If they are completely separable, then this means that identifying people by their subjective gender really has no relevance as to whether they are a male or a female. Male and female are biological terms.
Ben then posed the question that always sends activists into a spiral. What is a woman? Simple yet problematic for their argument.
Simple.
What is a woman? Define what a woman is without reference to the word woman, please.
So this is actually a logical fallacy called a red herring. You're asking me a question in order to actually challenge my question without actually
No, it isn't. I'm saying that
it
really is not. I'm saying that biology, I'm agreeing with you that the notion of gender, which is effeminateness or masculinity, can be different from biology in the sense that biology is just pure male or pure female. But to suggest that there is such a thing as an effeminate male is not to suggest that an effeminate male is now a woman. Transgenderism makes the argument that if you believe that you are a woman, you are therefore a woman.
The student kept citing medical associations, but their confidence started to fade. Reality hit hard.
Right, so this dichotomy is a false dichotomy that isn't supported by any of the medical associations that I just named
Then
off.
let me
None
explain.
of the medical associations that I just named off would actually support the idea that gender is biological. This is something that's completely untrue within every single medical consensus.
Well, then I will just say that anyone who suggests that gender has no reference whatsoever to biology, it's not connected in any way to biology, is just full of shit.
The student tried again,
Thank you.
desperate for a comeback, but this time Ben shut them down for good.
The reason that I
then you actually just disagree with medical consensus within the Western nation.
Yes, I disagree with the false medical consensus driven by politically driven, quote-unquote, doctors. If any doctor denies to me that there is a dichotomy between male and female, a sexual dichotomy between male and female, they're ignorant, and they are letting their politics get in the way of their science. Anybody who suggests to you that there is such a thing, for example, as a pregnant male is not a doctor, they are an activist.
Meanwhile, another student compared civil rights to gender identity. But civil rights are about unchangeable traits.
Hi, thank you for coming to our campus. My name is Megan. I just have a question about something that you said. You state that American people come first and foremost, American values, American virtues, but you openly support platforms that take away trans people rights and openly do not agree with the fact that men can become women, women can become men.
So number one, that's not taking away anyone's rights. That's a recognition of reality. Also, 2 + 2 = 4 is not a reversal of anybody's rights. Like anybody's opinion of what they are that runs counter to the actual facts of the situation. You have a right to say what you want to say, but you certainly do not have a right to demand that everybody else say it with you.
Ben explained the difference, but the student refused to see it.
And that's you want to talk about a violation of First Amendment rights or a violation of basic American rights, trying to use the power of government, as so many people on the left have, to force everybody to say things are false in the name of your personal comfort. That's a violation of rights.
Oh, the worst violation of rights is giving them the rights to abuse women in sports, in bathrooms.
But to force people to do something for your own personal comfort doesn't infringe the same amount of rights?
What am I forcing you to do? Or anybody else who's trans?
Not be who they feel that they should be. They're not telling you.
No, I mean, you can be...
you can feel whatever you want to feel. You can be whoever you want to be. You can be a pineapple if you want to be. And you can tell people around you to call you a pineapple. No problem, all right? There is no issue with that. You can feel and be whoever you want. The problem is when you want the law to agree and give you rights that abuse the rights of others, especially women.
Anything you want to be, I mean, but you can't be, let's put it this way, you can think whatever you want to think about yourself. You can't be anything you want to be. You can't be Napoleon, you can't be Jesus, and you can't be a member of the opposite sex.
Doubling down rarely works in these debates,
That's kind of true,
and Ben's ultimate shutdown made that clear.
Do you think it's fair for the government to take those rights away?
Yeah.
Again, you
Government
haven't
should
defined
not
what
have
the right
anything-
is that you're talking about. You do not have a right to dictate to me what I think of you. And you
don't
certainly
have
do
a
not
right
have a
to
right to
dictate
dictate
to
to me
me
what I think about reality, especially when what I think reflects reality and what you think does not.
I'm not trying to convince you of anything. It's kind of like the government's trying to tell the people that they can't do something.
You can do
And the
what
same
you want to
way-
do. You just can't dictate to anyone else what they do about it. That's how human relations work.
How come you can do the same thing?
I don't even understand the question. I'm not doing the same thing. I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm literally not forcing you to do anything. I'm telling you to leave me alone.
Then came a different challenge. Another student argued Ben lacked expertise in sociology and psychology. Would credentials trump reason? Not this time. Ben shut it down quickly.
What I'm getting at is that you're not considered an expert in sociology, psychology, gender studies, lesbian dance theory, many of these things that you've brought up tonight.
I know a lot more about all those others than lesbian dance theory. As far as if you want to take issue with the argument, I would urge you not to use the argument from authority, which is somebody has a PhD by their name, they know what they're talking about. That's a dumb argument.
What I'm trying to get at is that the fact that if you have any other further education in any of these topics
hard
or
to
any of these fields of
understand.
study.
I don't need a 7-year degree in sociology to know bullshit when I hear it.
Yeah, thank you.
A trans student, however,
This is like the worst argument when, like, for example, you want to share your opinion about something and then they say, well, do you have a degree to be able to share your opinion about that thing? Did you go through that? Like, no, I can still have an opinion, all right? It doesn't remove the fact that my opinion can be valid just because I don't have a degree in a specific subject.
brought up the typical question about the right to exist, but Shapiro dismantled it in the most respectful
You have
and
the right
logical
to
way
exist.
possible.
No one
Question
taking
is,
that
what
away.
makes my right to exist any less valuable than yours?
Okay, so whenever people say right to exist, I'm not trying to stifle your existence as a human, but I can disagree with your opinion about yourself, for example.
Yeah.
Right? If you characterize yourself in a way I disagree with, I have every right to say that I disagree with that characterization, particularly if it's at odds with the actual definition of words or biology. Okay, so that is not a denial of somebody's right to exist. It's a denial that what they're saying about themselves is true, which we do to people literally all the time.
Then, another curveball. A student tried using genetics to trap Ben. They thought science was on their side, but science had a different story to tell.
Genetics that made somebody more likely to be gay, without the social structures around them. If we could find genetic markers that made an individual more likely to be gay.
Well, I mean, again, I think we're kind of talking at cross purposes here. I'm acknowledging that there are probably genetic influences that make people more likely to behave in certain ways on sex and on everything else. I'm also suggesting that the identification change from 0.8% of the population LGBT for people born before 1946 to 21% of the population for people born between 1997 and 2003 is not the result of a massive genetic bottleneck that occurred in 50 years in Western civilization. That it's a result of societal trends. And there is a trendiness to certain behavior. There's a trendiness to identifying in a certain way.
Meanwhile, another
I
student said,
mean, some people can like argue with the fact that a lot of them kept to themselves and they were not open about it because of discrimination, bullying, and whatnot, and that's why they were fighting for the rights, and that's why we now have 20% more. But I kind of do not agree with that either, because we would have heard about it from history, maybe like secretly talking about the family, the friends, some stuff like. Nah, it's like the cases are so low.
kids should tell teachers their gender identity but not parents. Is that trust or manipulation?
So given the...
Oh, and also we would have like grown-ups today that would be admitting that they were a certain, like they had these thoughts and ideas and they thought they are a different gender, but they had to like follow the society and the societal trend and whatnot. But no, we don't have any people who are 70, 80, 90 years old who are saying, yeah, I felt like a girl when I was younger. Like, no.
Current issue of a lot of trans kids in schools sometimes keeping secrets with their teachers about their identity that, you know, they don't want their parents to hear because they don't feel safe, you know, saying it to their parents. I'm going to assume that you and most conservative personalities generally disagree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Would you hold that same standard if instead of a trans kid in the United States, it were a gay kid in Iran keeping the keeping those same secrets with their teachers.
Shapiro dismantled his argument with simple common sense and a strong defense of family values.
I don't believe that kids should be keeping secrets with their teachers as a general rule of thumb, free of their parents. I think that parents are the chief mechanism for molding children, and the idea that teachers are going to be keeping secrets with kids, unless there's actual evidence of abuse, I mean, that's a different thing. If you're talking about actual physical abuse at home, then that is a different thing from my parents disagree with me about how I express my sexual orientation or my gender identity. That is not the same thing whatsoever. Obviously, if we're talking about kid goes home, parent beats the living hell out of him, that's not a matter for the teacher, that's a matter for the police.
Yeah.
And I'm much more troubled by the idea that a kid who is gender confused goes to school and is now keeping secrets from their parents who love them more than the teacher does as a general rule. Without any evidence of actual child abuse, the teacher is supposed to be conspiring with the student against the values and interests of the parents. I find that despicable.
Why? Like, how do the kids decide that the parents are not going to agree with them and going to abuse them if they tell the truth? Like, give me an example. Did it happen? When did it happen? Like, why would the child assume that the parents will be against it?
Argument that never seems to go away. The idea that speech is violence. Ben's logic exposed the flaw.
I was wondering in terms of, and what I mean by inciting violence is encouraging the same people who believe in like your transphobic beliefs, even that like homophobia is a sin based on your religious beliefs. Do you believe that because of what you say, you can encourage a lot of people to act on those beliefs?
So I have a very strong standard with regard to incitement, and I'm very consistent about this. If I'm not telling somebody to commit violence, I am not inciting them to violence. I've held the standard for Barack Obama when he was saying anti-police things, and then somebody went and shot up some police officers in Dallas. I said that's not Barack Obama's fault. When a Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot up a congressional baseball game, I said that's not Bernie Sanders' fault because Bernie Sanders wasn't calling for that. Political debate requires that you talk to people and people take your words as what they mean, not as an excuse to go and do violence.
Exactly.
I've never called for violence, nor would I.
Then that means you cannot put the blame on the person that was preaching something. You have to put the blame on the person that did the deed. All right? Like, doing the action is the problem. If you did the deed, then it's on you, 100% on you. You cannot blame other people for changing your mind or whatever. Then if your mind gets changed so quickly and somebody tells you something and you go and do it, like, how dumb can you be?
Expected, someone claimed Ben's words attacked transgender people. But is disagreement the same as an attack?
Attack
the
is
idea
not the
that
word.
I am transphobic, for example. This is a bizarre kind of attack in the sense that I don't know that I've ever exhibited phobia of trans people. I'm not afraid of trans people.
Well, transphobia is more along the lines of prejudice against the trans
So I
community.
I actually think that your first characterization was right. I think that transphobia is really disagreement with the basic principle that the trans community is trying to purvey, which is that people's sex is malleable, that people can move from male to female, and that it is my job, objectively, to now call them the name they wish to be called, and to teach my children that men can be women and women can be men. I fundamentally disagree with that point.
Meanwhile, another student tried to call Ben a hypocrite for his views on free speech by bringing up the book banning argument.
Hi, I'm Anna. I fundamentally disagree with most of your opinions and beliefs.
Thank you for coming anyway. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My question is, you've built so much of your platform and the Daily Wire's platform on arguing that woke liberal agenda is threatening free speech, yet your own party's platform relies on white evangelical Christians who like to ban children's books such as Harry Potter or books like The Bluest Eye written by Cornell's own alumni Toni Morrison. How do you reconcile
See, like, there are some things that I don't agree with Ben Shapiro, and
within your own party and your own claims that you support free speech so fully, or are you just arguing against ideas that you disagree with?
Ben made it clear to her that there's a difference between choosing not to support something and banning it by law.
If you want to send your kids to a school that allows Harry Potter in the library, by all means do so. My kid's school does include Harry Potter in the library. It's a free country. That is not the same thing as banning Harry Potter. Banning Harry Potter would be to say that you cannot, under penalty of law, you cannot disseminate Harry Potter in, say, the state of Alabama. And if you sell it in the state of Alabama, they will prosecute you and put you in jail. It is a dramatic misnomer to suggest that, and I like when people use Harry Potter as the example because, honestly, like, name the list of schools that are banning Harry Potter. I can name you a list of schools that is much, much longer that's banning, say, genderqueer for fourth graders, which seems totally appropriate to me. I think that risque sexual content that countenances a wide variety of sexual mores is not appropriate for fourth graders, and I don't see what's even remotely arguable about
true.
that.
Then came a broader question. Should
But
white men
Harry Potter per se, like, it's more about fantasy and magic, and like, I read it when I was younger, not kid, but I was younger, and I don't think I saw anything wrong with it. I feel like kids don't really specify whatever it is inside of the book per se. They will just look at the characters and the fantasy in it, and I think they will follow that. And Harry Potter is an amazing example of that. Like, I love Harry Potter.
have opinions on abortion and race? Does knowledge depend on skin color?
A leftist friend and I once got into a debate about whether or not white males' opinions should carry weight in discussions concerning the LGBT community, feminism, and race. And she argued that white males' words should not carry the same weight as marginalized groups that they themselves do not belong to. And I argued with her a lot. And she said, to say that they can have equal voice in discussions involving oppressed groups that they don't belong to is inherently wrong. And that even though they're an ally, the best thing that they can do is listen. And I was wondering how you would go about debating such an opinion, and if white people are really immune to racism, and if they are allowed a voice in political topics.
After hearing that, Shapiro set the record straight and dismantled the argument.
That argument, which lies at the root of the intersectional argument, is nothing but sheer bigotry. It is sheer basic bigotry that undermines the most crucial element of a free republic. A republic is based on the idea that you and I can have a conversation, that my membership in an identity group does not obviate my need to make an argument to you or my necessity for listening to an argument from you. And this, again, I think springs from the notion that we are all made in God's image, and God doesn't really care whether we are black, white, or green. He doesn't really care whether I'm Jewish or Christian when it comes to the crucial issue of whether your opinion ought to have weight in a logical conversation. God's a fan of logic, in other words. And I think that we all should be fans of logic if we hope to live in a republic together. There's nothing I despise more than the notion that I am supposed to shut up because your truth trumps the truth. There's no such thing as your truth, there is just the truth.
A student took the mic with what seemed like a reasonable question.
Yes.
You've talked a lot tonight about how important it is to let people believe what they want to believe, and how the government and us have no say telling people what they should think or what they should be able to say. I just wanted to ask, what's the harm, if somebody's going to be a happier person because they say that they're a man or a woman, like, what's the harm in just letting them do it?
Ben drew a clear distinction, because once the lines are blurred, anything goes.
Exactly. The lines get blurred. If we keep feeding this idea and we keep making excuses to people, and look, we have furries who are asking for rights, all right? We have pedophiles who are asking for the right to abuse kids. Honestly, people are talking about these things. Like, this is where we have to, like, immediately, with a crisis, stop back and change things, because this we cannot allow anymore. It's like when you give someone a finger and they want the full hand, and this is beyond the full hand. This is absurd.
In favor of government banning people who are adults. Children I'm in favor of banning, because now you're talking about somebody who's not capable of consent. Right? All of our laws are based on the ability of people to consent. If you're a child, you can't consent. So I'm very much in favor of banning gender transition for kids. I think that it's 100%. Frankly evil. I think you're making decisions for children who are not capable of making decisions for themselves that are permanent and have long-lasting, significant, and severe impact. As far as adults, if you're 25 and you want to get a sex change surgery and you feel like it's going to make you feel better, you have the right to do it. You do. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I mean, the research on this stuff tends to be somewhat conflicting, but if it works for you, it works, right? It's a free country.
Then came the real issue. Ben pointed out the growing radicalism. What began as personal choice was turning into forced compliance.
Yes. Now, that's really not the question that's being asked in our society today, because I don't think there are that many people who are like, we want to ban gender surgery for a 30-year-old. I'm not seeing the campaign for that. What I am seeing is a campaign on the left that says that my child is going to be removed from my home 10 years from now if I don't agree with the left's view of how I should treat my child's gender confusion at age 4.
Absurd.
I see the left suggesting
that was the situation in America, where parents don't have the rights to, like, say, no, I don't want to make my child transition and give them hormones. Nah, I cannot believe that there are people around you assessing what your child is going to be and telling you as a parent what you have to take in consideration right now through medical procedures to make your child a different gender, because that's what they want, because they decided that's what the child wants.
That they want to fine me if I refuse to say that a man is a woman as a general proposition. Right? If I say that men and women are separate, then the left says this is discrimination. Or the left is going to suggest that it has no impact on my business if I employ a woman at Hooters and she shows up the next day as a man.
right? Like that does have an impact on my business, right? But the left would suggest, well, you should sort of deal with it. Well, it turns out that gender does mean something, and it does have an actual meaning to people outside of you.
A student boasted about winning a prestigious award before launching into a tirade about gender. But accolades don't guarantee truth. Ben was ready.
Hello, my name is Quentin Merritt. I'm a mathematician and a physicist here, a double major, and I also just won the most prestigious award in the country to pursue research at any institution I want, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. So I think I'm pretty, qualified to say that most of what you're saying is based on, like, old data. But my question to you, and so I want you all to, like, realize that.
Last month, but sure.
For example, gender identity disorder, that's the DSM-4, bro. We use the DSM-5 now for psychologists to be able to talk about...
I literally cited the DSM-5 in the speech, and it's called gender dysphoria, which is the term that I use throughout the speech, not gender identity disorder.
You sound like a bozo, bro.
For someone who is so sophisticated and so intelligent, why do you have to stoop so low and start talking like this? Can't you, win the argument with actual facts, with knowledge from all of this that you mentioned already of how smart you are? You're talking like someone who can actually argue on the street with zero education, all right? And that makes me not want to respect you. That makes me not want to talk to you because you're not worth my time. I don't want to stoop that low.
Can't even make your wife wet, bro, so what's good?
He switched to arguing that gender roles were just a Western
Wow.
idea and that other cultures had different views, but Ben wasn't buying it.
We're using a Western colonial idea of gender, then why should it apply? If we're using, because the gender binary is a Western colonialist framework of gender.
You're right. Men and women don't exist in any other culture.
No. Think about Native American.
Nailed it.
Third gender people. I'm not saying that. Third gender people exist in Native American societies, Western African societies, like Southern Native American societies, like Mexico. So in other places that are not white dominated,
And they
like
are
the United States or
incorrect.
Europe. And so you're saying
saying
white,
they're biologically
so non-white
incorrect.
people. I'm a mathematician and a physicist. You cannot tell me.
Oh my God. The narcissism, the ego. This is it. I'm gonna go and get educated. And then because I have a bachelor degree or a master degree, even PhD, I have the right to say whatever and you don't have the right because you don't have that education. This is exactly how we started this video. No.
So I have a question.
And also, you're not a biologist.
So I have a question.
I'm 20.
As a mathematician and a physicist, what in the hell do you know about human biology?
And you got your
that
law
allows you to
degree from
deny it?
Harvard.
Then came the final blow, leaving the student with no choice but to walk away in defeat.
And frankly, I would ask another question. If your logic is so flawed as a mathematician and a physicist, I would suggest that whichever institution gave you an award, revoke it immediately.
A student argued that people can't be gendered just by looking at them, but Ben shut that down instantly.
We cannot fully identify a gender of a person right when we see them, so therefore I believe that it is not within my own individual liberty to gender that person.
Here's my problem with that particular argument. The answer is that in 99.8%, 99.9% of cases, you absolutely can gender somebody based on looking at them. Really, if you're going to use intersex people as an example of not being able to do that, this does not obviate the biological duality of sex upon which all progeneration is based for all of human history and for all mammalian species. So intersex people do not invalidate the concept of sex as a generality. Intersex people are people who have a biological anomaly.
Even though the student tried again, Ben
it's
wasn't
an
about to...
anomaly. It's a disease. It's the percentage is so low. Now we're gonna talk about that.
let that slide.
You can't really describe someone without secondary sex characteristics and gender them into something.
Well, I mean, you can based on primary sex characteristics if you can see their genitals. Doctors do this literally at birth all the time.
Not only that, doctors need to be doing that. What, you die and it doesn't matter what you think you are. Your autopsy and your body is gonna show who you are and what gender you are. Easy.
Right. So this is but your point is correct. If somebody was male dressed as a female and I misgendered them and then they said, "Oh look, I'm male," zip, right? Then I would say correct, and then correct. I would say, for all of human history, you were male. Now the standard is chromosomal, right? It's the SRNY gene and all of this. There is some objective standard, in other words, by which we can determine sex.
Then, a demand. A student insisted the Boy Scouts allow biological girls to join, but Ben hit back with the obvious biology matters.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place. They can't just like.
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts.
Where's that written though? See, like why do we have to even argue with that? It says boy. Like, oh my god, it says women bathroom, female, male.
Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl.
17 though, like. People are very much changing their culture.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
A student attempted the perfect gotcha question. However, Ben didn't flinch.
You have claimed that you oppose medical transitioning for these children, namely and specifically to what normally happens is puberty blockers, which you called it child abuse. Is that correct?
It is. That's correct.
You consider it okay. You consider it child abuse. You consider it child abuse because you believe that a child is not capable of consenting to what you consider are irreversible procedures. Is that correct?
A damaging, irreversible procedure.
Damaging. Okay. Yep. Ben, are your children circumcised? Did you circumcise your children?
Yes, I have two sons and they're both circumcised.
Why would you do that? Isn't that kind of hypocritical?
Nope, I'm circumcised. My works just fine.
The student interrupted, trying to regain control, but
I mean, like, why would one and the other be the same? Why would a child grow up and be like, I miss that piece of skin on my pee-pee? You know, like, I feel naked now without it. Oh my God, my hygiene is better. I am way more clean. Oh my God, also, like, that part is more satisfactory without that skin. Interesting. And my girl likes it more like that. Cool. But no, I miss it. Can you put it back on? Like, maybe there is a procedure where you could just put some skin around or just stretch the skin. Oh my God, that is awful. That is insane.
Ben wasn't finished yet.
Why is violating the bodily autonomy of an infant acceptable to you? And I can say, I'm a owner and I can tell you.
So if you put earrings on your girl, which people always do, they put earrings on the female and on their girls. Is that a violation because you just made a hole in their ears?
There's sensitivity right there, Ben, that is removed when you do a circumcision. Why is that okay to you?
Well, I don't mean to get personal, but I'm sure it doesn't seem like you could possibly have a basis for comparison. You can't be both circumcised and uncircumcised. You're going to have to choose. As far as the efficacy of a once it's circumcised, if you wish to get into the biology, I'm perfectly happy to just point at my 4 children. I've been fruitful and I've multiplied. It's all working out just great. As for the notion that it is a grave violation of bodily autonomy, I can tell you there are millions of men across time who've been circumcised. This is not a quote-unquote damaging procedure in the same way that, taking a boy and shooting him full of estrogen so you can later cut off his and is. That's an absurd comparison on every level.
Then came the heaviest argument, one tied to life and death. A student claimed that not accepting trans identities increases self-harm statistics, but Ben pushed back.
So my main disagreement with you is on the subject of transgenderism. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen in the past is that you said one of your principal objections to the transgender movement is that you think accepting them into society won't necessarily help solve their problems. Is that like a fair characterization of what you say?
No, I mean, I think that I don't think it's fair in the sense that I think everybody should be treated with a certain level of dignity. But what I have said is that I don't think that the high transgender suicide rate is attributable to societal intolerance.
The student fired back, citing studies that linked discrimination to a higher risk of self-harm. Yet Ben wasn't done.
Seriously?
Okay, so I sort of disagree with, or I don't think the empirical evidence necessarily says that. I've seen studies from UCLA that have drawn different conclusions, but I realize if we disagree on the empirical evidence, not much can be resolved here tonight. So assuming that it would help to accept them more into society, would you change your position on transgenderism?
So the position on transgenderism I want to clarify so that I can tell you what I would change and what I wouldn't change. So what I would not change is the idea that you cannot force people to call you what you want to be called. That is anathema to a free society. I will also not change the idea that we should not indoctrinate children in blatant biological falsehoods, like there's no such thing as male and female.
Then, Ben delivered the final word. True respect isn't surrendering to pressure, it's standing by reality.
I've also said in conversations with people like Blair White, who's a transgender woman, meaning a man who believes he's a woman, I've said to Blair, like, if we were at a restaurant or something and we were out to dinner together, I wouldn't go out of my way to call Blair White a he. I mean, presumably we'd be speaking in second person with one another. But at the same time, like, for the same reason that, you know, there are people in my life who do lots of things that I disagree with, and I don't feel it necessary to launch a conflict on the basis of that every time we meet. But that's a different thing than what the transgender rights movement is saying. What they are saying is that society should cram down on people.
That is so true. Everything he said and more. I am glad that this topic has been brought over and over and over again, especially that we have been discussing it on the channel, and I have been focusing more on openly talking about my opinion, but also about the facts out there. Like, I cannot believe that with this modern society, and especially in America, but also in Europe, Western Europe especially, like, you can see how far it went. And I am glad that in a way the President Trump, with his agenda against, or the war against wokeness and woke no more, made other people more open about discussing it and talking about it. Because if anyone is getting bullied, is whenever you had a different opinion and whenever you did not agree, you would be canceled. The cancel culture got worse and worse and worse. We became, especially online, we became so afraid to speak our mind, or else we were gonna get canceled, even if it is not what we thought, or even it was not what we think. But if we said it the wrong way, or we did an expression the wrong way, we would immediately be canceled. And if your job is on the media, like, it was so threatening, it was so dangerous. Like, you could lose your whole livelihood because somebody called it discriminatory, even if you did not think so, and everybody jumped on the hype and jumped on the train because that's what they do. It's all hate and bullying. If anybody is getting bullied, is those people who did not mean it and they got canceled immediately before having any other choice. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.